Hi, everybody. Meteorologist Joe Chaffee. Welcome to the Joe Chaffee Weather Show on this Friday, the 4th of October, 2019. Hey, we made it through another week, and it is, how can you not be in a good mood? If you are from Virginia northward, it was just a great day. And, of course, the folks going south into Virginia are jumping up and down after yesterday with temperatures that hit 100 degrees in southeastern parts of southeastern Virginia. Meanwhile, here in my neck of the woods, we've got frost advisories up in some places inland. This is going to be a very chilly autumn night indeed, with lows down in the 30s and 40s. And as you go up into upstate New York and on up into New England, we're going to see some large pockets where temperatures will get down in the 20s. So for you snow lovers out there, the process has begun. And of course, we've been talking about this pattern change with the death of the big upper high in the eastern part of the United States. And we're seeing now this all starting to play out. So a lot of this being kicked off by Hurricane Lorenzo, or as I was calling it, Lorenzo, the pattern breaker. So glad to see everybody on board tonight. Let me just, right off the top, just real quick, download the free weather app, the Meteorologist Joe Chaffee app on Google Play or on the App Store. You can get the forecast and current conditions for your location, and you don't have to put in your location. It'll find it automatically on your phone, and that makes life a whole lot easier. Plus, you get all my posts that I do throughout the day, and you have notifications on there too. So when there's new stuff that I put up, or if there's weather going on, you'll get notified. So be sure to download it. It's absolutely free. And also my let's call it my partner app, which is the Angry Ben's weather app, or the Angry Weatherman. Ben Scott helps me with my nycweathernow.com website, so we made an app for him too, and it is also free. So if you'd like his perspective, download his free app. It's available for Android, but as usual, it is not yet available on the iPhone from Apple. We are working with Apple to try to resolve a few issues, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks it will be there as well. So make sure you do that and have them both handy on your telephone. And for some reason, if you can't get a hold of me, you can get a hold of Ben. If you can't get a hold of Ben, you can get a hold of me. Okay? So let's get started tonight. And I want to start off with the temperatures, the high temperatures for today, because it was another day, and I'm going to start where the heat has not broken yet. Where it has not broken, this too shall break, and there will be changes in the southeastern part of the United States, where we're still dealing with some blistering high temperatures for the first part of October. I wish over the years, I'm sure it's happened before. I'd have to really go back and check to have heat into the southeast this late in the summer to fall transition, but this has been kind of unrelenting for a while. And you look at these numbers; they're just insane. Again, now Petersburg, Virginia. Let me just find it. It's here somewhere. It's one of these numbers. Well, you can see I'm pulling up these obs, but one of these numbers was Petersburg, Virginia yesterday, and they were at 100 for a high. And today, it looks like that a boundary zone made it into northeastern North Carolina, where temperatures are much cooler by about 15 to 20 degrees from yesterday's highs. But just south of there, the numbers remain pretty oppressive. Duke 95, Duke Forest 95, Burlington Alamance Airport, regional airport, right now at 84. They got to 97 today. Raleigh-Durham, let's see if I can punch them up. Well, that would probably be the Duke Forest. It's 84 right now. They got to 93. Franklin County Airport is now at 73. So they've seen a big change there from the standpoint of the temperatures, and they've got an east wind at 16 miles an hour. So that's telling you that that wedge is moving down. East-northeast at 12 at Irwin-Harnett County Airport in North Carolina. It's 83 there after a high of 97. We go out to the west. Mount Airy is 82. North-northeast at 6. They got to 90, but there's elevation there. Statesville, 87 after a high of 94. So you get the idea. And when we head down into South Carolina, also another brutal day. McEntire Air National Guard Weather Facility Base at 89 right now with a light east-northeast wind, and the high there was 100. We had Barnwell is at 93. They got to 100 today. Augusta Bush Field, 84 right now after a high of 100. And Atlanta Hartsfield is 93 at the moment after topping out at 97. And you've got these 100-degree readings near Warner Robins, Georgia, America's Southern Field Airport. I'm not sure what that's tied to. It's 100 for a high. Now it's 95. Montgomery, 102, now at 90. Southwind there at 7. So the boundary of this frontal boundary that we are looking at is actually, if you do it from the standpoint of looking at where the surface winds are, and we'll have the map load here again. I hope I'm not going to have the same problem I did yesterday of this stuff getting hung up. But if you do it off the surface plot, this is as of 5 p.m. This is where you would put the frontal boundary. So it matches up where the winds have gone either northeast or east. You see it there. So north of there, they're starting to get that drier, cooler air beginning to bleed southward. But just south of that frontal boundary, you got that little wave there in central Georgia. You've got those temperatures also in the upper 90s as of 5 p.m. this afternoon. So the thing is, the temperatures are not really showing the transition. When you jump to the other side, the dew points really drop. I mean, you're 97 with a dew point of 46. Atlanta was 94 with a dew point of 56. So the air, that's the drier air, but it's kind of like desert heat here to a certain extent. It's not that really super tropical humidity. South of the frontal boundary, your dew points are in the 60s. So yeah, there it's humid. And we're going to see that boundary push southward. So for those of you that are watching from the southeast, just hang in there. It's almost done with respect to the extreme heat. And going further north, as far as the high temperatures are concerned, you can see the big differences in my neck of the woods. You had a lot of places in northeastern Pennsylvania and up into the middle and upper Hudson Valley and the Catskills that didn't get out of the 50s today. It was mostly low and middle 60s, low 70s down in southern New Jersey, low to mid 70s in Delaware, Baltimore into the low and mid 70s, Washington, D.C. Topping out at 75. They're down to 64, by the way. That's north and west of Washington. Camp Springs is 67 with a dew point of 47. Annapolis, why won't they come up? Baltimore Washington Airport is 64. Northeast at 16, gusting to 22. That has got to feel good with a dew point of 44. So this is all cool air that's up into the northeast. We've got a north-northeast wind. We have a high to the north. And that's how we funnel down sometimes the coldest air of a given air mass. And if you were to get a setup like this in the wintertime, we probably would be extremely cold here as far as the overnight is concerned with that north-northeast wind. Kind of funny that you don't see that setup happen too often in the wintertime. It did happen often. A lot of times you get that cold air comes in from the west or northwest. It's when it sets up like this where you get this funneling down from the north-northeast that you get some really, really cold temperatures. That wind coming down the Hudson Valley and points east where there's not a whole lot of subsidence that goes on, so you get that pure cold air from eastern Canada. So kind of getting a taste of that. I think we had it happen a couple of times last winter where we had that solid north-northeast setup that brought in some very cold temperatures. So you just got to have the right setup for it. Now, let's just go take a look at what we are seeing weather-wise in the short range. Then we're going to look at the long range and then the tropics. And, of course, the weather across the U.S. is actually rather quiet. There's not a whole lot going on outside of the frost and freeze warnings that you have up for northern Pennsylvania all the way up into New England. Where you don't see them up in northern Maine, northern Vermont, New Hampshire, that's because they've already had their first frosts and freezes, so they're kind of one and done. Once you have the first one, it just marks the end of the growing season, so you don't see them repeat the frost and freeze warnings, unless of course they don't verify tonight, and then you'll probably wind up we'll see them again. So once you go under that threshold, they don't use them anymore. Also up in northern Michigan and on the upper peninsula of Michigan, some red flag warnings up in parts of Utah, into western Colorado, southern Wyoming, and in a small area in northern California for unusually dry conditions and fire risk. But other than that, there really isn't much of anything. No real severe weather showing up. A couple of tiny little winter weather advisories there in southern Montana and a couple of counties and one county in northern Wyoming. And that's really about it from that respect. And when we look at the next 7 days as far as rainfall is concerned, again, it's going to be kind of dry to a certain extent. We are seeing weather fronts that are going to be moving from west to east. The problem is that they seem to lose their punch as they reach the east coast. That could be because the upper support lifts up rather than playing all the way through. It weakens and lifts up to the northeast, so it kind of squashes the fronts a little bit as far as their productive value is concerned. Nonetheless, just inland of the coast, from Maine down to western Tennessee and into northern Mississippi and northwestern Alabama, you are seeing forecasts of about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of rain over the next 7 days. And for some of those areas that touch into the deep south, that rain is certainly welcome. Into western North Carolina, northern Georgia, on up into western Virginia. But the eastern parts of those states really not showing very much, even right along the immediate coast where they're a little bit closer to tap some tropical moisture. Not all that much. That darker green is up to about 1/2 inch of rain spread out over 7 days. You can see there's a lot going on out in the Atlantic. There's a lot going on in the Gulf of Mexico with the a system in the Caribbean that's going to be moving into the southwest Gulf. Much of the southwest, and it looks like everybody west of the Rockies is dry except for the Pacific Northwest, and that's about it. And also we got some wet weather, again, some big rainfall amounts in some places in parts of Oklahoma and Arkansas. They've just been getting killed this summer with rainfall. And also in eastern Kansas, actually going back even to the spring as I recall, southwestern Missouri, some 3 to 5 inch rain amounts possible over the next 7 days. This time of year, remember, we're coming out of summer. We're not deep enough into the autumn where we start to really get these more wintry-like weather systems, if you want to call it that. So we're in this kind of transition phase where the weather, at least here in the east, has a tough time generating rainfall, which is nice because actually this is can be a beautiful time of year. There's the only area of risk today, a marginal risk in northwest Nebraska and southwestern South Dakota, and that's all that she wrote with regards to the risk for severe weather. Now, the U.S. satellite tonight, as we now head into the sunset, moving from east to west, a little bit of thunderstorm activity that's going on the southern part of whatever was left of that upper high, which is hardly anything. That's actually right south of the frontal boundary, but there's still some semblance of very weak upper high there that's just finally dying out. And you're seeing those the clouds that are running across the northern tier. They're moving from west to east. There's a huge gap of dry air that covers much of the Ohio Valley and into the coastal northeast. You're getting some instability clouds as you head up toward the Great Lakes in northern New England. And last night's cold front is out offshore, but we have this developing low southeast of Nova Scotia, and as a result of that, we're getting that cooler, drier air that's coming down from the north. Nice and dry in the southwest, not too much going on in parts of most of Texas, and then of course you see the disturbed weather that's in the Caribbean, out into the Atlantic, and also a little bit in the Gulf of Mexico. We're going to come back to that in just a little bit. I'll pull up a close-up satellite view, and we'll take a close look at the tropics. which I'm not really overly bullish on at the moment, just to give you a heads up. Okay, so let's get the window back up here. And let's see where we're going in the short term. One other check I want to bring up. Let's just bring up the national radar. And you'll see that the Northeast is bone dry. A little bit of action here. Some scattered thunderstorms just south of that frontal boundary. A lot of what you see in this green here, that's all ground clutter that's showing up. And then you start to see some showers moving through parts of the southern plains, the central plains, back over into New Mexico, on up into parts of Nebraska, and then you've got some precip that's going on in parts of the northern Rockies. Most of this is rain, although there's probably some snow in some of the highest elevations from this next weather system that's going across the plain. So let's take a look at where the upper air is going to take us going forward. And I'm starting off with just from Wednesday, just to show you what we've gone through with respect to the features here that we've been dealing with. Of course, you know, here was Lorenzo at the time approaching the Azores. Here's your big upper high, your western trough, and your jet stream pulling up to just north of New York City, which is about where the boundary was for that wicked heat that we had here. And the high reaching its peak strength at this point on Wednesday, and then it starts to stretch out and gradually flatten until we get to tonight, where it's almost all but gone. There's a little bit left of a little ridge here sitting over Alabama, but it's definitely weakening. You have this upper feature here that is strengthening out in the Atlantic. So this is the driver of that cooler air down into the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic states. And of course, you've got this western trough, and then there's this ridge that runs in between the two, what's left of the upper high down in Mississippi. Now that's for tonight. As we roll forward, one of the things you're going to notice is that we're going to something where everything is moving along from west to east. The upper high is completely gone by tomorrow. Here comes the next trough. This is for Monday. So we're going to have the core of the cool air tonight into tomorrow morning. High moves out. In the southeast, the high is actually going to build down into Georgia, so you're going to have that northeast wind bringing down some of that cooler air, so certainly some relief. The next trough swings through, so the high moves out off the coast, south of Cape Cod. You get to a southwest flow starting later Sunday night, and Monday, with a cold front Monday night. But the whole scheme here is that it's a progressive pattern. Progressive not in the political sense, progressive in that everything progresses from point A to point B. Everything just moves along. So next week, you have one trough lifting out, and here we go for Wednesday. You got another fairly deep trough that drops in to the northwest and swings into the Rockies and Plains. Actually gets wrapped up quite nicely here a week from now. Sitting in southern Minnesota, a little wrapped up system there that runs up toward northern Lake Superior. So that's going to bring another front in late next week. But in between that, we have another surface high that will come in. It'll cool down. You're probably going to have a high that's going to build up in New England. So that means onshore flow all the way down into the southeast U.S. So the extreme heat is not going to be an issue. And then out that goes. Now, interestingly enough, late next week, you've got this cutoff that forms well east of Cape Cod and south of Nova Scotia. There's a little bit of a ridge in between, and then you've got this cutoff low. That's the strong cutoff low that's over in the Great Lakes. So eventually, the western cutoff, the Great Lakes cutoff, wins, and it gets kicked along because if you look on the west coast, you've got a couple of troughs following it that move into the western part of the United States. And again, it's progressive, one after another after another. And once again, in the long range, you've got the GFS doing this absolutely crazy wrapped up cutoff at the end of the forecast period with this very deep upper low dropping into Illinois. Well, prove it to me. Okay, that's all I can say. It's funny because I think it was the off-hour runs seem to be doing this in the long range, and the standard runs are not quite doing it. But that's so far down the road. I'm not even going to concern myself with it. The bottom line is, at least for the next week or so, it's a progressive pattern and everything moves. And I think that's really the big takeaway with regards to what to expect. So putting on the surface map, and let's see, let's roll back. The snow lovers are in northeastern Minnesota and Wisconsin are going to be loving this. And also up and through parts of Montana. So let's take a look. So here's your high for the weekend. Builds down, gets to Cape Cod, and at this point, here's where your frontal boundary is. So sorry about that. Didn't want to do that. Hold on. So let's try this again. Here we go. So your frontal boundary here is at this point somewhere down in here. And here's your next cold front that is well out to the west. This is Saturday evening. So you got a long way to go to get that front to move to the east coast. So I think obviously tomorrow is going to be a great day. And I think even Sunday for the most part. There'll be some clouds in the mix. The southwest flow will probably bring in some high clouds. But I don't expect any rain at all. Unless there's an isolated shower, I would tend to think that the vast majority of folks in the Northeast are going to be bone dry. Now, Monday, that front gets closer Monday morning, but it takes all day for that rain to move to the east. And by Monday, late afternoon and evening, we do see rain. This is measurable rainfall, not actually the actual radar echoes, but we are showing measurable rainfall down into Georgia, Alabama, and southeastern Louisiana, and on up through the interior mid-Atlantic and inland of the coast of the Northeast. That front comes through Monday night with some showers. Then in comes the next high for Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And you can see here, by the way, that the onshore flow goes all the way south. I'm just giving a little extra attention to the folks in the Southeast because they've been running their air conditioners nonstop, and it's just not fair that they can't have the cool air that we have up here. Meanwhile, here comes that energy into the northwest that wraps up into a low in toward the Great Lakes, and of course there's cold air on the northwest side. We're at that time of year now, so there might be some snow in parts of the northern plains and into the northern Rockies again as this thing progresses southeastward and turns eastward. And lifting up to the Great Lakes brings another cold front here late this week, but it goes so far north and west, and the Gulf of Mexico is not really open for moisture for business. So as a result, you don't see a really impressive area of showers here that moves by. In fact, the area weakens as it moves east. Looks like the front comes through sometime Friday night or early Saturday. We'll see how the models time this as we get a little bit closer. And then after that, you look at the model at day 8 or 9, it looks bone dry except for a little precip coming into the northwest. Looks like the whole country is going to be silent around the middle part of the month. And then, as I said, after that, who knows? Just kind of curious as to what it does here. Oh, how nice. Develops a little low of some kind of low off the southeast coast in the long range and lifts it up northward and produces some snow up in the northern lakes. Don't get excited, okay? This is a long range. We don't really, we have very little faith in this, as you know. Once you start looking past day 7, you're really taking it into your own hands with regards to putting some trust in what the models show. I want to look at the tropics just really quick here because I did notice that a few of the models, a couple of things going on that might be worth watching in the medium range, short and medium range. I don't know. I mean, it really isn't going to amount to much of anything for us, but we do see something. And I noticed that the European and the Icon model in particular, and the Hurricane Center did mention this in their 5-day outlook, that a low is forecast to form in the central Atlantic. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if that happens, nor would I be shocked if this were to become a tropical storm down the road. This is a time of year where you sometimes see this sort of thing happen with upper lows that get left, troughs that get left behind, and the waters there are very warm, the atmosphere is very warm, so you wind up with these cold core converting to warm core systems. But these are all fish storms, and then there's something else that forms there with the cutoff that's off the east coast. That's probably some sort of non-tropical system that heads up to the north, but who knows. And what we've been seeing for many days now is this kind of, I guess the best way to describe it is this sort of gyre of moisture that is down over Central America, that you get these little disturbances that sort of rotate up and around. And some runs have been producing low systems that develop in the Caribbean and move northward or northeastward. Some of them have shown that area to be much further to the south, so you get these lows. Instead, they come out on the Pacific side and develop into tropical systems. This model run happens to do a little bit of both, and then spins off another low. We're getting to a time of year where if something's going to happen, it would probably happen in this zone. So you might want to start, especially as we get past the middle of the month, you probably do want to pay a little attention to that. And I still think we're going to have a couple of more named storms to get out of the way. One thing I'd point out is if you look at off the African coast, and this is something that happens now this time of year, you're going to get a wave. The model shows in the long range some kind of wave coming off the African coast. Now, it may be real, it may not be real. But oftentimes what happens this time of year is that the push westward is so non-existent that they already come off and start moving northwest or northward pretty far to the east. So I really would start shying away from looking at anything of consequence coming off the African coast and moving all the way across. You just don't have the same type of flow. The trade winds are starting to weaken because you're getting that seasonal transition now away from the heat of the summer and early fall. The upper high, for example, is not nearly as strong. Out in the Atlantic, it's a lot flatter, and the easterly trades are just a whole lot weaker. So the Cape Verde season, I think, unless there's a shocker, it's all but done. And then, of course, again, you're starting to see all these changes up in the northern latitudes as we get deeper into the fall. One thing I want to look at, by the way, when we while we have the map up, I want to just take a look at the North Pacific, because the models have been trying to show. I always look for the possibility. It's a good thing to always look to see if you've got recurving typhoons, because oftentimes when that happens, that tends to strengthen any kind of upper low that might be in the Gulf of Alaska, which would be more favorable for troughing in the east. For laughs, I will tell you that some of the prior runs showed a typhoon recurving near Japan. The European wanted to take it straight to the west into the Philippines. Today's run of the European now has gone maybe to a little bit more of a recurvature at day 10. I mean, these are the types of things you just kind of look for in the long range to see if there's any possibility of something happening. And right now, I mean, I really wouldn't, I wouldn't put too much faith in what's happening out there. It's been pretty quiet relatively quiet in the Western Pacific, and it's probably a function of the El Nino that disappeared, and some of the cooler waters that have appeared in part of the tropical zone where these systems start off at. Now, I pulled up the upper air. This is from 5,000 to 30,000 feet to look at the wind shear conditions, and you'll notice there's a big upper high sitting in the Northwest Caribbean. You also have this upper low that is where you have all that weather on the satellite. Now, you look at the satellite here, you've got all this weather in the Atlantic, but if you look at the motion, there is an upper low that is sitting here well northeast of the Bahamas. So that's a cold core system, and nothing is going to come of that. And you're probably getting some shear effects extending down into the Caribbean. There's an upper high that is under this area of the disturbed weather that's on the Caribbean side. But the problem with that is, as you go forward, the upper high just kind of weakens and flattens out. And you still have some rather strong winds that are going on in the Gulf of Mexico going into early next week. So it's hard to see how anything is going to come of this in the coming days. And in fact, past Monday, much of the Gulf of Mexico is experiencing very strong wind shear conditions. So I'm not really overly enthused by what's there now developing into anything in the next 5 days. And in fact, the Hurricane Center talks about the disturbed weather in the Northwest Caribbean, and they rate it as a 0 chance of development on their last tropical weather outlook. So, bottom line is we've got a great weekend of weather ahead, and I would humbly suggest that everybody just enjoy it, especially for tomorrow. This is my favorite time of year, by the way. I just love this time of year. It's wonderful when you're outside and it's cool. The nights are cold enough where you can sleep wrapped up in a nice heavy blanket. Some places could be turning on the fireplace tonight. And I love this time of year. MZ Safalarite. I know you've been on it. Please, I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. I'm sorry that your cat has been missing. It used to drive me crazy. My cat was an indoor cat, but he knew he would pick his opportunities when you would open the back door or the front door, and he would just kind of lurk. You wouldn't even know he was behind you, and then you'd open the door and he would just shoot right out. But he was very good about, he'd go out for about a half an hour, and then he would come to the conclusion that he doesn't have to pay rent, doesn't have to pay a mortgage, doesn't have to pay for heat, and he's fed. So it's all easy. And he would just sit by the door and start crying because he wanted to go inside. So he never would get that far away. By the way, I also had, I live in central Long Island, and we have a fair amount of wildlife that's around, but the area where I live is, when I first moved there, it was much more rural than it is now. I mean, now it's all built up, and you got your usual round of shopping malls, but there's still a fair amount of wooded area. But I'm guessing that with the big weather change in the front coming through, the bird activity today was particularly interesting, because I heard this screech. And a screech in response. I went out in my backyard and I saw 2 beautiful, very large eagles flying overhead. And every once in a while I will see a hawk, but these I think were eagles, and they were finding spots in the oak trees near me until they got chased away by a couple of very aggressive mockingbirds. Mockingbirds have no fear; they go after anything that's threatening their nests. And I've seen them attack dogs and cats. They do these dive bomb things. And the eagles were just having no part of it, so they eventually just kind of flew away, and they were upset, so I could hear them screaming. But it was such a thrill to see that activity this morning. I think the birds have kind of made their announcement that the season that the season has indeed finally changed. So Scott Briller, so I did say 15, and they got 15. Had to wait till October the 2nd to get that 15th day. If I hit it on the nose, I'm going to tell you right now, I will admit it front and center, that was as lucky a guess. I wish I could pick the lotto numbers as easy as I was able to pick that 15 for the number of 90-degree days. So Chuck Cardillo, Timothy Veltman, you've got your winter firewood cut, so I'm sure you're going to use some of it tonight. Mirtha Gunter asking Chuck what is highest average temperature for the summer months. Being in the Catskills, Chuck, I got to believe that 90, where you are in the elevation, 90 doesn't happen all that often. And I noticed that your nights get pretty cool. So I'm envious of you during the months of July and August. Humidity is humidity, and that nullifies any type of cooler temperatures in the summer months. But 90-degree days, I would think, is still tough. Doug Crum, you're still at 93 there, but you're going to get your break you got the wind shift, so now you just got to wait for that cold air and that wedge to build in. But you should see things cool off. And of course, Chuck Cardillo on the other end of that is already down to 37. So you're getting your hard freeze tonight. Your annuals are pretty much done. And you welcome the change. I don't blame you. My daughter's in Atlanta, and she was telling me it's just been absolutely unbearable with the heat the way it's been in the last, especially in the last week or so, when it's been going to 100 almost every day. I lived down in New Orleans for 3 years, and usually by the time you got to the end of September, you'd get the arrival of that first cold front and that first push of dry air and lower dew points, where the dew point actually would get under 70, was a monumental event. It was welcomed by everybody in the city. As soon as the temperatures get under 70, they used to kid around that people would come out with their coats on. But you get so used to being 91, 92 every afternoon with the humidity and the afternoon thunderstorm that would bubble up, and you suddenly have this wonderful, refreshing air. It's an amazing feeling, because you just think it's never going to get there, and when it finally does, you just love it. Scott's you're looking at temperatures in Siberia. Okay. It's early. Siberian snow cover growth is early. We just started the month. We're gonna wait at least 10 days. We'll wait on day 10. We'll take a look at it and see how we are progressing with regards to it. Mark Glatfelter, it's a crazy 2 days ago. It was in the 90s, and now you're in the 30s. Isn't that something? And this is the time of year where you can get stuff like this to happen, where maybe 90 is a bit extreme, but you get something like a big ridge like that in the eastern part of the United States, say in late October, early November, which if you go back in the last number of years, I forgot which winter it was. It was either 13-14 or 14-15. I think it was 13-14, where I think we had the big ridge in the east into early November, where we were seeing temperatures getting into the 70s every day, and then it just kind of shut off. And all of a sudden we went to the other extreme, and winter got underway early that year. The first snows were early, and I'm not trying to make a correlation just because it happened then, or how it happened then versus how it happened now, but we're in the first week of October, so you are going to see the cooler air masses from Canada are starting to gain momentum and starting to come down, or will try to come down, as long as the upper air pattern is favorable enough. And at least right now, it is favorable enough to bring air masses and move them along. So we're in a typical autumn pattern. Everything seems to be moving the way it should. Alfred Phillips, our buddy from Wainwright, Alaska, on the North Slope. How cold or how warm is it? I did notice that there's been a winter storm warning up for the last 3 days across the middle part of your state, north of Fairbanks. I also noticed that the bigger cities, I guess because maybe they're more in valleys, are all either forecasting rain or very little snow, and that the snow is more for areas that have a bit of elevation. But your days are getting shorter and shorter very, very quickly up your way, I'm sure. Scrub Kila Fortnight. We did look at it earlier. The GFS is going to do that out by days. It's been doing that every day this week, pretty much. Between day 10 and day 16, trying to spin something up in the Gulf of Mexico, occasionally straddling it up off the southeast coast. It never gets inside the 10-day time frame. Every day it's a day later, it's a day later, it's a day later, it's a day later. So you just can't really pay attention to that sort of stuff, and it's part of the huge variability that exists in the model. The further out you go, you're going to have a wider range of possibilities of what the model might produce. What's there on one run need not necessarily be there the same way the next. And that just not only goes for tropical systems, but also goes for non-tropical systems. Back in 1987, Timothy Veltman? Let me see if I could find something here. I'm sorry, I didn't get a chance to. October snowstorm 1987. Let's see if I can pull up something that's not going to get me in trouble. But a lot of this stuff's copyrighted, so I don't like to use it. The Weather Service has got something. So we can take a look at this. Maybe they got some pictures. Major winter storms. This is for Albany. Unprecedented early season snowstorm, October 4th, 1987. 3 inches to 2 feet fell across eastern New York and western New England. As you told me, this was the earliest snowstorm for Albany in terms of snowfall. This is numerous branches, trees, down power lines, blocking roads. Albany described looking like a war zone. Hundreds of thousands without power for up to 2 weeks. Most snow that ever fell during the month of October in Albany. Earliest measurable snowfall for Albany. The Weather Service here says 6.5 inches, so I'm not exactly sure where that was. But here is actually they do have a snowfall map, so I'll bring that up. They got a few graphics here that we can show you. And here is the map showing the snowfall from this. The hatched area is 12 to 18. So it looks like into the parts of the Catskills and 6 inches down into Sullivan County, almost to the New Jersey state line. So that was pretty amazing. And you've got some 18-inch amounts as you jump on the other side of the Hudson up along the New York State, Massachusetts, Vermont, the 3-state border there. So that's the way they had their maps drawn in those days. And see what else that they have. So here's what it looked like on the satellite. Very interesting. I have no memory of this, to tell you the truth. Coastal storm in the Northeast broke records. Heavy snow, eastern New York, Vermont, western portions of Connecticut and Massachusetts, etc., etc., etc. I'm going to post the link to this, by the way. I'll put the link up for everybody if you want to take a look at this. Hang on one second. I'll put the link up. Here we go. So you can take a look at this afterward. So let me get back to it. Let's see what else they have to show you. So this was 1987 for Albany. Here are the 10 snowiest. 1987 to 2011, 1952, 2016. It's kind of funny when you look at this. 2000, 2002, 3, 4, 5 of the top 10 snowiest Octobers. And I would venture to say that most Octobers you get 0, but 5 of the snowiest Octobers have actually happened since the year 2000. Since the year 2000. Wait, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 of the top 10 have been since the year 2000. If you want to go back to 1980, so 5 of them have been since 1980. That's kind of interesting. And let's see, what else do they have? Now, here's some more stuff that you can get on. These gives you all-time extremes for Albany at least. And the last link, there's actually a case study. Okay, I'm going to give you guys some homework to do. Oh, this is good. So look at, this is great. You got some really interesting, look at this shot. Rensselaer County. And remember, this time of year, the leaves are still on the trees. You can see them. All the leaves have turned, but they're all still on the trees. And, that has to cause damage with the weight of the heavy snowfall. That's very nice. No one I know. Oh, God, amazing. January, yes. October, no. So look, I'm going to put the link up to this, to that for that as well, and I think I'm going to put it up on my Patreon platform for the Patreon folks to read about. Hang on, I'm going to put this here. Timothy, thanks for letting me know about this. And by the way, if you've got anything like this that's historical that that you want me to look at, and we could look at it on the show here, by all means, just send me a message, email, or even post it on the board if I can get to it. I'd be more than happy to bring it up on the air and we can talk about it. Veronica Rees, Lorenzo, a disappointment in Ireland. Well, Veronica, remember we were talking about it the night before, how the model suddenly pulled that low up a little further north and it weakened it before it moved into Northern Ireland. That was a big, big change. That was very significant with regards to the outcome. There were gales and there were some gusts over 50, but this was never going to be like Ophelia was, which had a huge amount of impact in Ireland. So I'm glad. Look, it's good when you don't get the storm the way it looks like you're going to get it. That's a good thing. Okay. So that was a big plus that it did what it did. October 10th, 1979. That rings a bell, Michael Azera. I'll dig around if I get a chance and see what I can come up with. So when we get to the 10th, I'll try maybe do something. But remind me just in case I forget. Doug Crum, Timothy Veltman, the views watching tonight's are in the 40s. I guess the first forecast of snow will go into the hundreds. That's quite true, Doug. It's a Friday night. Ahead of what looks like a nice weekend. Friday nights usually, unless there's a storm going on or a storm approaching, are usually one of my lowest nights for viewership. I think Fridays are the lowest. Saturdays come very, very close. Sundays actually do quite well. I think by Sunday night you're getting ready for the week. You're watching football all day. And I'm a good diversion. Alfred Phillips, 12 hours of daylight now and diminishing quickly, I'm sure. Pretty soon you're going to be sending me those warm temperatures of below zero with the wind chills at mega double digits below zero. 41 right now, wind chill 32, Wainwright, Alaska, Western Arctic. Very good, thank you. If you look on a map, folks, you want to see where Wainwright, Alaska is. It's way up. It's right. It's on the north slope. So when Alfred is on and posts on the chat during the heart of the winter, he's usually in total darkness and hasn't seen much of the outside world, I would imagine. Alfred, just for that, what you live up? I mean, you're there year round, so I imagine you live and work up there. That's got both ends of the extreme. I've always found very interesting how you get that 24 hours of daylight and how do you sleep in that, and the 24 hours of darkness, and that I think has got to be tougher, not only to sleep but while you're awake. I guess you got to find like artificial light of some kind to help you along during the day. I remember reading somewhere that tanning beds were really popular in Alaska, so people could get at least some semblance of ultraviolet light during the winter time. Okay, so I think that'll wrap it up. Bobby Livingsworth, I do remember the Halloween storm of 2011. Yes, that was a big deal in Connecticut and in the Hudson Valley. People lost power for weeks. I do remember that, and that was in an El Nino year. That turned out to be the biggest snowstorm of the winter for a lot of folks. That is etched in memory in a lot of folks that live in the Hudson Valley and in Connecticut, because that was a killer. That was a foot and a half of heavy wet snow, trees down, power lines down. The leaves had barely turned. They were still on all the trees. It was a huge problem, Okay, I'm going to wrap it up here at this point. Thanks for being here, everybody. We had a good show tonight. Everything seemed to be working technically, and that's a good thing. And I seem to have my thoughts together pretty well. Not too many stumbles going along, and that's also a good thing. Hope you have a great weekend plan. Do a little apple picking. a little pumpkin picking, and enjoy yourselves. And as far as live streams go this weekend, it looks kind of like a non-event tomorrow, so I'll probably take Saturday off, and we'll see about maybe doing something Sunday night after football is done. But you'll have weather in 5, both Saturday and Sunday, up in the mornings for a quick update. And if I don't do anything this weekend, I will definitely be back here on Monday with the Joe Chaffee Weather Show. So once again, a quick reminder, here we are at the end of the week. Let me just one more time, in case I put this link up, so you can take a look at this really interesting case study of the October 4th storm in Albany. So again, for those of you who haven't downloaded my free weather app, let me give you the link for that. But you can go to Google Play or the App Store and just search Meteorologist Joe Chaffee and download it and install it on your telephone, on your mobile device today. And you will have more weather than you know what to do with. And you could even watch these live streams from there. If you missed them, you could certainly watch them on the replay. And when we have big storms around, I actually embed the live stream in so you can watch it from the app while we're doing it. So that's a good plus. And it's free, which is even better. If you do have the app, just please make sure you have the latest updated version, because we did make a few changes regarding the functionality of it so that you can get notifications. Martha Gunter, it'll work in North Carolina if you'd like. So make sure you download it too. Same for you, Doug Crum, in Georgia. It'll get your local forecast conditions, and you don't have to put in your location every time. It'll default to your location automatically as long as you allow it to happen. For those of you who are looking for a more let's say more extensive weather experience, I think that's a good way to describe it. I do have my subscription weather platform on Patreon, which is ideal for weather geeks and those who really enjoy weather and want to learn more. And you can, if weather is part of your daily decision-making process with business, you can, with your businesses, you can look at some of the higher tiers that are available. But for the average person, it's $2 a month, and that $2, by the way, goes a very long way to support the weather apps that I have. My app, and I do have a new. Well, it is mine, but it's also my friend Ben Scott's weather app, and that is the Angry Weatherman. And it's available on Android, and I'll give you the link for that as well. So if you've got both those apps, you really can impress your friends and be weather savvy. But the Patreon, that $2 helps to go. It helps to pay for the creation of those apps. It helps to pay for the maintenance of those apps, and it also helps to keep the ads on the apps to an absolute minimum, which I really want to keep it that way. So thanks for those of you who have joined and have provided support by joining Patreon. I really do appreciate it greatly. And one other way as we end tonight, just a reminder for those of you who shop on Amazon and who doesn't, that is the easiest way you can support my channel, and it doesn't cost you an extra cent. Just use the search bar, buy whatever it is you're going to buy, and Amazon will throw me back a little bit of coin. We're a participant in the Amazon Services LLC Associates Program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for us to earn fees by linking to Amazon.com and its affiliated site. So you buy your stuff. You don't have to buy what's on there. Just use the search bar, and Amazon throws me back some coin. And Alfred Phillips, I think it will even work in Alaska. So if you download the free app, it'll work up there. Okay. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Have a great weekend, and we will see you. If we don't see you Sunday night, probably see you back on Monday.